Hey there, it's Mackenzie, your host of Winning. We're looking for sponsors for the podcast. If you have a business that you would like to promote to thousands of people, send us an email at podcastwinning@gmail.com or send us a message on social media. I cannot wait to hear from you. Now on to the show.
Winning is your guide to making it in business. Join our award-winning host and entrepreneur, Mackenzie Kilshaw, and special guests in casual conversations that will educate and inspire you on your business journey. Winning will help you learn the hard lessons the easy way with guidance from celebrated entrepreneurs and business leaders. It's fun. It's informative. It's winning.
Hello and welcome to Winning. I am your host, Mackenzie Kilshaw. And today's guest is Meagan Chorney. Hi, Meagan.
Hello, how are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm excited to be here.
I know. I'm excited to have you. I've known Meagan for quite a few years now. And when we kind of connected for her to be on, I'm like, you're going to be an awesome guest. So I really appreciate this. Of course, we always chat before. And I'm like, okay, we have to start recording because we're talking about things that we should be talking about on the podcast. So Meagan is a multi-passionate entrepreneur, mental health advocate, mama, wife, mentor. Honestly, I think the list is even longer than that. Her life has taken twists and turns as a result of her life. So has her entrepreneurial journey, mental health, motherhood, adversity. It's all playing a role where she is today. And she currently operates Connect Permanent Jewelry and a digital design company, Life Design Creative Studio. And Meagan is like me. She actually owned a business and was full circle, started, owned, and sold it too. So you've had lots of different paths in your career.
Yeah. And I guess that's why I am multi-passionate. I've been told that by so many people. I'm all into like the crazy like astrology, numerology type stuff. And they've all told me that I'm multi-passionate too. And I mean, it rings true if you look at what I've done. So
yeah, I totally agree. And I think too, anyone that has multiple businesses on the go, you are passionate. You're passionate about what you're doing, and you're passionate about entrepreneurship too. And the fact that it's like, okay, let's have another business or let's start something else. Right?
Yep. I know when as you alluded to, I sold my previous companies and my husband told me, he's like, okay, we're not going to do anything for a year. Okay. Like that was our deal. And I think it was like 3 months later and I was doing something else. So I mean, when you have it, you can't stop it.
No, I agree. It's like, people are like, why are you doing another thing? Like, how do you have the time? And you're like, I don't know. I just do. You just make it, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, awesome. Well, why don't you just get things started here? And I gave a little bit of a bio of you, but why don't you just kind of tell our listeners a little bit more about you and maybe your current businesses too, and just kind of give people a little bit of an idea more of who you are.
Sure. So I, as you said, am a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I grew up in a small town in an entrepreneurial household. So I grew up around entrepreneurship right from a very, very young age. And so it was always kind of something that I knew I was interested in. And so I grew up, had a couple businesses through school, businesses in air quotations, because that's what I was in high school. And then went to university, and in my final year of university, started my first company, and basically just saw tons and tons of growth in that right away. And we did that. We grew a couple of companies under that umbrella. And then life kind of shifted, priorities shifted, and decided to make the huge decision to sell. And so that took place July of last year. And so, like I said, I promised I would take some time off, but I didn't really. And I started Connect Permanent Jewelry. So I have a home studio and we do it mobile as well. We do lots of bachelorette parties and that sort of thing. So that's really fun. It's a way to get my socialization or that social butterfly part of me out, and be creative and stuff. But I still can have the flexibility to be home when I need to be home and that sort of thing. And then I also do Life Design Creative Studios. So that is basically just a digital design platform. Do anything. I've got an Etsy shop, so do different things on there. Anything that can be used digitally or print, any sort of media like that. Lots of custom orders. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me, I guess.
That's cool. And we're going to talk more about your journey and selling your business and moving into your other businesses. When we get into things a little bit more, we're going to talk about motherhood and how your life changes when you're an entrepreneur. But going back to when you were maybe younger, you grew up in an entrepreneurial family. What did you dream about doing as a career? Like, did you always know you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or what were you thinking, I want to really do this?
That's a really interesting question. Because if I'm being honest, I didn't really have one idea, and you could see that multi-passionate side of me right from that young age. It would change depending on the day. I always had like really big, far-fetched ideas. And then if I would sit and I would like close my eyes and think about what I wanted to do, my heart always went to, I was a competitive dancer. My dance instructors were like second moms to me. I looked up to them so much. And so I always, like, when I closed my eyes, I just thought I wanted to have my own dance studio, and I could visualize what it would look like, how it would feel, and that sort of thing. So when it comes down to it, yeah, I probably always thought that's what I would do. But I definitely had, I was like, oh, I'll be a lawyer or a pediatrician or this or that or whatever the flavor of the week was. So
yeah, I always say too, like, I think I didn't really even know what an entrepreneur was, but I always knew I wanted to have my own business.
Totally.
Like, I didn't even know it was a thing really as a kid. But I was saying, as you grew up in a family where my dad had lots of businesses and different things going on all the time. And I was like, I want to do that. But I didn't really know it was a thing. So, you go to university, you're like, well, I have to, get a big person job and whatever. And then you realize, oh, you can do what you want to do. And you took your vision of a dance studio and you made it.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. And talking about the dance studio, Meagan and I actually know each other because I was partnered with her husband for a celebrity, I use that term very loosely, philanthropy, more raising money for that. So that's how we got to know each other. And I actually practiced in their dance studio, and I really witnessed, I'd go in the evening and there would be tons of kids in there, and like the joy in their faces. So when I was at your dance studio, I knew they loved you and they loved the other teachers and the environment. And I know that you really created a space that was really special to them. And I can imagine that was a very hard decision for you to sell it.
Yeah, it was probably one of the hardest things that I've ever done. Because like you said, you could just feel the joy. I really put everything I had into creating that space and cultivating that environment. And to say, like, I'm not going to do this anymore, that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, it is. And I've also been through that with the business too.
I was going to say, you know exactly what it feels like.
It is. And you know what? There is a little bit of grief involved. And that sounds maybe a little far if some people might listening say like you grieved your business, but it is like your baby. When people say, oh, my business is my baby, it is because you created the idea, you created the vision, you created everything, really. I mean, you created your procedures and your policies and all of that. You watched it grow from a dream to something that was your career. And then full circle, you sold it. And now maybe you don't have to, but sometimes you have to watch someone else now taking care of your passion project, right?
Absolutely. Which can be really difficult.
Yeah, I know. I'm fortunate that Piper that bought my business is awesome. And so I'm a big supporter of that. But I know that from the outside, it's like, oh, they changed something, or, I didn't do it that way, but it's not that it's bad. It's just different. Right. And you have to just, with your own self, be like, it's not mine anymore.
Yep.
Right. You have to be able to say goodbye to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, did you have, you started your first business while you were still in university. A huge thank you to our sponsor, Just For You Day Spa and Wellness. Just For You is Canada's premier day spa with 5 locations in Alberta and Saskatchewan. The award-winning luxury spa features Leah Reese cosmetics and iconic Betty jewelry that you can also purchase online. Visit www.justforyoudaySpa.com to book your service or to purchase a gift card.
Yeah, I was 20. I was just going into my 4th year. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I always ask people if they had a turning point in their career, but your first career step was a business.
Yeah, that would be accurate.
Yeah. So, how scary was that?
If I'm being completely transparent, it was scary, but I feel like I played it safe or played it smart, maybe, in that I was going to university full time. I also had a almost full-time job with the company I started with as a summer student. And so I wasn't relying solely on this business to succeed right off the get-go, which I think is something that lots of people make that mistake of. And then obviously, it takes some time for a business to be successful sometimes. So in that sense, I had a safety net. And then we really we started small. I said right from the get-go, this is really bad advice maybe, but I have always said, I don't do this to make money. I really just wanted to create joy, create that supportive environment. Like, I've seen all different sides of the dance industry, and I just knew that there were gaps to be filled and that we could fill those gaps. And so with that being said, we started with small expenses, small space. And so I feel like we maybe played it safe off the get-go. And then we grew as the demand grew. And in that sense, we made sure that we still, had things covered and had a roof over our heads and that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't know. That would be my story getting started.
But you know what? You say you didn't do it for the money. You did it to bring joy to people. But I think that in turn brings you profit because you filled a void, right? Like, you filled a void and you maybe did things differently that other dance studios or dance teachers were not doing. And then other people seeing that, like, oh, my friend's child goes to the studio and they love it so much. We're going to put our child in that. Oh, you're growing. So that was probably part of your values or part of your mission statement, right? And you did that, but in turn, it brought you that profit and growth.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important. And really, I think it comes down to somebody's why as well. Like, my why was to build that beautiful environment. And so in return, that is going to, like you said, bring me those clients. I'm going to see the revenue come in because I'm staying true to the whole reason that I started that business. So yeah, maybe not good advice to go in not hoping to make money, but stay true to who you are and what your values and mission are, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if you make every decision based on those values and that mission, then you're always going in the right direction, right?
Absolutely. You're always winning. Yeah.
And I think I've said this before, but when I opened my first business, my clothing store, my goal in the first year was to break even. Like, my goal, I did not have a goal of making money. My goal was, let me just pay for all of my expenses and my mortgage, and I'll cut out stuff. Like, I don't need to go to Starbucks, and I don't need to go on a holiday this year, and I don't need to buy anything. Like, I made personal sacrifices, but I was the same as you. I didn't go into it with the idea of like, I'm going to be rich doing this. I went into the idea of, I'm going to have a different business than everybody else, and I'm going to build it as the time goes on. And as long as I can just keep my head above water, to me, that was a successful first year.
Absolutely.
Right?
I can agree with that. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think for most people, their first year starting out, like, to be realistic, you're not going to make money.
Yes.
And if you do, that's fantastic. Yes. That's like a bonus because you're on the right path. But probably that's not going to happen. And be prepared that you're probably going to have to get a loan or start with borrowing money or something. So you're probably going to be in the hole for a while, right?
Yeah. And those are some of the things that you don't learn before you go into business. Nobody really talks about that unless it's this sort of platform. I didn't know that. I mean, my parents and my in-laws, actually, they run a business too. And we talked about that once, and they were like, my goodness, the number of small business loans that we've had to take out. But nobody really knows that. You just think that you can just fly with the profit that's coming through every day and your cash flow. And I mean, sometimes that's just not the case. And you've got to, put the ego behind you and say, I'm going to get a loan to help me out. So that just isn't talked about enough, because I know I sure did not know that before we got into it.
No, you can read everything. You can literally, like, you can go to university for a business. You can get all the education, and it's the real life things that happen. And then you think, I'm the only one. This has never happened to anybody else. And then you hear a podcast or you hear people talking, it's like, oh, never mind. Everybody's gone through this, or lots of people. And that's, for me, this is why I do the podcast, because it's real life experience and it's real life things. And maybe something that you say today helps somebody else on their journey. And that's what it's for, right?
Right. Yeah.
We all share our knowledge, help each other out. It's kind of like when you have a baby and you can read all the books and you can do all the stuff, but no one tells you what actually happens. Until you're going through it.
That they don't tell you.
No, they don't tell you. And this, I think, is a really good segue for us, because what we're really going to talk about today is motherhood and entrepreneurship, and how it is both rewarding and challenging to do both. I think as women, I'm a stepmom, but I have a constant struggle in my head of, my business is important, but my stepson is more important than that. He is that he's my priority, but sometimes you have to work, or sometimes you have to be at work. So let's just start out with kind of the basic, but how did entrepreneurship change when you became a mom?
Oh my God. It changed in every way, just like your life changes in every single way. So this is probably, some of this will relate to moms and entrepreneurs who had children and then started a business. But for myself, I had multiple businesses and then decided to have a child, which also wasn't really in my playbook 5 years ago. My life, I was so content with what I was doing. Anytime people would ask me, are you having kids? I'd be like, no, like, I have all of these kids at the studio. Like, they're all my babies. Like, I know all of them by like their names. I know their parents, all of this. I said, like, I could not give what I need to give here and also give what I needed to give at home if I had my own. And then COVID hit and priorities shifted for me big time. I sat there one day and I realized that at the, like flick of a switch, everything that we've worked for could be taken away and, shut down. And at the end of the day, all we really have is our family and the people closest to us. And so that really made me take another look at, what we're building that we can come home to every evening. And that was a huge, huge transition. And I said to my husband, I was like, I think we should have a baby. And he's like, we've been together for 11 years and you've not wanted a child ever. And so it took him some time. Yeah, it took him some time to be like, okay, are we actually going to do this? So that's kind of like where that transition happened, because I was happy to not have a child and to really just work this business and take care of those kids. And so everything really shifted for me, because I was going from being 100% present in my business, being there all day, every day. I was the face, to now having to hand the reins off to other people. And if I had one regret, it would be not hiring people to be me soon enough. I heard a podcast the other day, and the host was talking about when you need somebody in your business, it's already too late. You need to be hiring those people way before that, because you need to get everybody up to speed. They've got to, care about your baby as much as you do, which isn't possible. Not trigger warning, spoiler alert. It's not possible. Exactly. Nobody's ever going to care as much as you do. But that would be one of my biggest regrets, because I was no longer able to be present as much as I was before actually in the studio. I had to be present with my baby at home. And so that was a huge shift for me. And then I had a lot of mom guilt as well, because you said, you have to work, but you also know you need to be at home with your child. And so it was finding that elusive balance and trying to figure out, when am I going to do this work? When am I going to feed the baby? When am I going to, make sure that they're practicing their skills and their tummy time and this, and then I'm making supper and I have to sleep still, So it's like really trying to find that balance and figure out where your time is best spent. And so those were two of my biggest struggles when I entered motherhood, being an entrepreneur.
Yep. And I think the mom guilt thing, honestly, that happens whether you are an entrepreneur, have a career job,
absolutely,
or an employee. I mean, it's a never ending thing. And every time that you have to do something for work, you think, oh, this is taking time away from the child or the kids. But I also think on the flip side of that, it's also really good for kids to see the females in their lives succeeding and doing things, right? So absolutely, it is, I think, like, balance is such a hard thing when people say, how do you balance? But it really is it's a give and take, right? And both sides of that are really important.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to make sure that you have a solid team in place. So, and I mean that by you and your partner, making sure that, you're on the same page. If you've got to be working, taking time away from the home, you've got to make sure that they're supportive of that too. There's nothing worse than having that sort of tension too, on top of having to really then feel guilty about being away and not connecting and being a solid team with your partner. So that would be another piece that is so important.
Yeah. And I think too, if you are married to a non-entrepreneur or a non-business minded person, that can be a struggle, because it's like, well, you need to be at home. And in your head, you're like, but I need to be going to this place to sell my product to make us money right? Like,
exactly. Yep.
So you need someone that understands. And I'm not saying entrepreneur needs to be with an entrepreneur, but as long as they understand
communication. I say communication is always the answer to everything.
Oh, I agree. Say what you're feeling, right? It's like, say what you're feeling and thinking and work it out. Because if we don't do that, even in your business, right? Like if you don't communicate well with your staff or your clients, like things are going south quick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how do you balance motherhood and entrepreneurship? But I think the word balance, like, I want to just throw that out the window because it's never like me too. It's never like an even, like, right?
No, never.
Never.
And that's something that I surprised, learned it on another podcast or heard it.
Yep.
Balance is not a 50-50. Some days it's an 80-20. Some days it's the opposite, and you're giving more at home than at your business. And that, if we're always shooting for that 50-50, we're going to drive ourselves absolutely insane because it's not possible. Some days you need to give more in one area than the other, and you just make it up other days. And I think that that's really important to remember and to just give yourself grace.
I agree.
Yeah. I don't know. I also use this balls in the air analogy, and I've shared it with a couple of friends too, and it's helped them. So there's some things in your life that are plastic balls, and it's okay if you drop them because they're not going to shatter, but some are glass. And so you've got to juggle all these things, and you just have to make sure you don't let those glass balls fall through the cracks, right? Like family, your kids, like what are the functions in your business that you absolutely need to be there for, and what can you pass along so they turn into plastic balls that, if you can't handle that while you're juggling everything else, somebody else can grab it because it hasn't shattered if you drop it, that sort of thing. So that's like, I'm a really visual person, and so that really helps me when I'm struggling. It's like, okay, what are the ones that I need to keep in the air and, keep moving? And what are some things that I can, put to the side until I have a free hand to continue? So I don't know.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, no, that's a great analogy because I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to try to do everything.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's a baby, or like you said, you have kids and you start a business, and there's that struggle of, how do I do everything everywhere? And the answer is you cannot.
No.
That is the answer. You cannot do everything at home and at your business. And I think when you talked about having a team, that right there is your kind of your little golden egg, because
absolutely
your team can take on a lot of those tasks, freeing you up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I sat and I thought of, I actually wrote down, I took a week and I wrote down every single task that I did all day, every day that week. And I figured out, where was I spending my time? Could some of those things be passed on to somebody else in the business who is capable of doing those things? And then I also had to sit and look at where my energy was being spent. And energy and time are two very different things. You can sit down and be completely exhausted and waste 3 hours trying to work on a social media plan for your business for the next 2 weeks, and it's going to not end up complete after 3 hours. You're going to feel completely burnt out, and you're going to end up hating sitting there and doing it because it's such a waste of your time. You're not getting anything accomplished. But if you go into it with a clear head, you're able to take the time, feel like you've kind of crossed all the other things off your to-do list, and actually put some energy into it because you have energy to give, because you've passed off other things. You can pound that out in way less time and feel so much better about it. So it's not about the time we spend, but it's the amount of really good energy that we give to a project. So that was something that was really important for me to realize as well. It's like, I don't have to be spending time necessarily on all of these tasks, but if I can spend 5 minutes doing a really good job at something, then that's great, Yeah. So I hope that makes sense.
It does. It totally makes sense. And I think too, it's just kind of business in general. Like, if you're not good at things, or you don't like doing things, or they're what I call a time sucker, something that takes me a long time to do because I'm not, I know the basics, but I don't like payroll. I'll just say, give an example, right?
Either it's something that you're not an expert in, or it's something you hate doing, right?
Yeah.
Both
so
of
get
those
somebody
things.
else to do it.
Exactly.
I always say farm it out. Like, if you have a team then someone on your team, you give them those responsibilities that you're like, this doesn't have to be me. Right? Like if it doesn't bring you joy, literally, or it doesn't bring you revenue or profit, then probably you should have someone else be doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, in all areas of business, not just when you're balancing motherhood and business.
Yeah. Because what do you want to spend your time doing on a Monday at 5 p.m.? Do you want to spend that time doing payroll that you hate and you have to Google search, there's a stat holiday. How do I, right? Or do you want to spend that with your family? Right. Or do you want to spend that maybe for you going to one of the bachelorette parties and promoting your business and creating revenue, right?
Exactly.
Like those are the things. If it's not bringing you joy or revenue or time to spend, right? With your kids, your family, get rid of it. Get somebody else to do it.
Easy enough.
It is. I know.
Not easy though.
It's not easy at all. Let's be honest. It sounds really easy, but all of a sudden now you might have to train one of your staff members to do it, which takes time.
Yeah.
You're still going to get questions, which takes time.
Yep.
Or you have to pay somebody to do it, which takes money. Right?
Oh God. And honest, if I can be completely honest, I still am the worst at handing off tasks because in my mind, I'm like, I could just do it myself. It would be done faster. I wouldn't have to explain how to do it 12 times. Honestly, even it happens in our house. I'm like, no, you know what? You go do this. You play with the kid and I'll do the other thing because I don't want to explain how to do it because I could just do it myself in half the time. And that was a huge area that I struggled in and something that I regret right from the beginning. I should have been doing more of the teaching and less of the doing, because once you get those people in place, that's easy, right? It's the fact of actually having to take that time to do it. If you handed it off right from the beginning, you're laughing. That's easy.
Well, I always think of the give a man a fish, he eats for the day, but teach a man to fish, or woman, he eats or she eats forever. So it's the same thing. Yeah, it takes you more time today or this week or this month, maybe, depending if it's something larger. But after that, it's gone.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I agree. I fell into that trap too, because I was like, well, it's just easier for me to do it. I'll just take the 10 minutes down to do it. But that 10 minutes here and an hour there and whatever there is hours if you add everything up. And it's continual. It's hours every week or every month. Or, whatever it is. And then that time is just time. There's only so many hours in the day, right? So that time is just gone. Yep. It's not time with your family. It's not time with your child. It's gone. It's just kind of evaporated.
Yep. So if you could learn one thing, please don't do what I did.
I think every entrepreneur says this. I haven't talked to one yet that's like, oh, from day one, I just had all these staff members and paid everybody. Because usually when you're starting out, you don't have the money or you don't have the team.
Yeah.
Right? So you do it all because you have to. You don't really have a choice. But there becomes a time, and I like your saying, do it earlier than you think. And it's true, because one day you kind of just wake up and you're like, oh my God, how have I been doing this all? I shouldn't be doing this all, but I am.
Well, and then you panic because you've got to, first of all, search for somebody, interview, hire somebody, and then you do the teaching. And then in your head, you're like, I'm spending this time teaching, but I have X, Y, Z to do because we're growing. And, you know, it's like, you need to get those people in place sooner. And again, do as I say, not as I do.
Well, that's why they're here. Learn from our mistakes and successes. Or learning. If you don't like the word mistake, you can use the word learning. Learn from what we learned by just listening to us. That's why we're here. What have been your biggest challenges? We've kind of touched on a little bit of this, but becoming a mother, having businesses, selling businesses, starting new, what have you found that have been the hardest things?
You know, I think I would have to go back to again, talking about like that balance, that would be absolutely the most challenging thing. It also, it was really hard for me because we had a very traumatic birth experience, and we had, I mean, still have quite a high needs child. And so I blamed myself. He's delayed, and there's a number of reasons why. And also, every child is different. So if you have a delayed child, just know that you're not alone.
Nope, I'm sure there's a podcast for that too, because you're not alone.
Seriously. So I had really, really, really bad guilt when it came to, having to face his delays too, because right away I blamed myself because I was spending time with the business and not every waking hour with my son. And now I know that that's not realistic at all. I know that I was in my head, and there's no truth to that at all. But that was a really, really tough thing for me to go through. And I imagine that any mom is going to go through something similar, whether their child has higher needs or not. You sit there one day and you're like, man, did I miss that because I was busy answering emails? Or it's just all of those things. And I'm a super sappy, sentimental person. And so I had such a hard time with the idea of, having time away from him and not being able to, maybe see some of his firsts or those sorts of things. And so really just wrapping my brain around, needing to be a mom, needing to be a business owner, and knowing that it was okay to take a break from one to do the other, and vice versa. I think that would be my biggest struggle. I think it all boils down to balance, but there's just so many different sides of it. Everybody has a different experience. So,
well, and I think too, as humans, this is scientific fact. I'm not a scientist, but I do know this is true. We are kind of pre-programmed to go right to that negative spot.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing in your head is, it's my fault. It's something that I did, right? And that's how we are. If you think about things that happen in your life, your initial reaction is, what did I do to make this happen? And the answer, more times than not, is nothing. It's got nothing to do with something you did or did not do. But that's our first reaction for most humans, right? For sure. And I think for you to, first of all, you first of all recognized, no, it's not something that I did, which most people don't even do that. You just live in that negative spot of, it's my fault. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the first thing. But knowing, like you said, you can't be everywhere and everything for everyone all the time, right? There are times when it's work and there are times when it's family. And I mean, I know you put family first. But going through that is a challenge in its own, right? Just that mental state of,
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I have had my struggles with mental health in the past and still do, which is why I'm a huge advocate for bringing attention to it. And so I also struggled really badly with postpartum depression. And then you add that into this whole big mess. And that's a whole other animal in itself, right? So I think that moms who are entrepreneurs, especially going through, I don't want to say one experience is any more challenging than another, but I think that being a business owner, adding a baby, especially a first child, and going through that experience, like that rocks your world in and of itself. And that's just a lot. It's a huge life change. So if you are going into it, if you are going through it, my heart goes out to you, like kudos to you, because it is not, entrepreneurship isn't for the faint of heart, but that is just hard. And it's okay to say it's hard.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs or mothers? But I think you just gave it. Like, it's hard, and it's okay to recognize that it's hard, right?
Totally.
And it's okay to cry, and it's okay to have a day that you need to turn off from your business. And that is all okay. And I think that we don't talk about this stuff enough.
Absolutely.
And we don't.
No.
You know, I used to think, like, if I had to close my business, like, I would not. Like, I don't mean close it. I just mean for like a day. Like, if my staff was sick and I was somewhere with my family, that no, I would drive in, I would get back there. And now I think, no, like, now I'm like, it's okay. It's okay if my business had to close for a day or a few hours.
It's such a shift. Hey.
Yeah. It's changed.
Absolutely.
Being a parent just changes you. You don't even realize it until you're in it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just gonna segue on that. Cause as I was preparing for today, I was kind of thinking about my own journey. And as you had kind of mentioned at the beginning, I've had ups and downs, and I've had twists and turns, and I've done a whole pile of different things. And, you know, I said how COVID really shifted things for me. And I want moms or any entrepreneur to know that, you know, it is okay if you change, if your interests change. Going into motherhood completely changes your life. It changes you completely. And so if you are not like totally in on what you were doing before, just know that there's nothing wrong with you. That's totally normal. You can come talk to me about dance, and I don't want to say I don't care, but it is not a priority for me like it was. It is not even a little teeny tiny part of my world right now. And that is okay, because it is okay for you to go with the ebbs and flows and to shift with whatever direction your life is taking. Just because you started this business doesn't mean you have to feel stuck in it, because let's be honest, you feel stuck and it's just going to become something that you just resent day in and day out. And I mean, that's no good for anybody either.
No, exactly.
So
and
yeah,
I think
just know you're not stuck.
Yeah, that's such great advice, because most of us that start businesses, you start a business based on what you're passionate about at the time. So for you, it was dance. For me, it was fashion. And our whole life was dance. Your whole life was dance.
Yep.
My life was clothing and shopping and those things. And so you created
would that be?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I went to New York to like fashion. Fashion week. I didn't go to like the Louis Vuitton fashion show, but I mean, I was there during that hustle and bustle, and you're just like on top of the world. But if I think about going to do that now, I think, oh my God, that's so exhausting. And I think about all the things that were like hard about it, not the fun stuff, because I'm at a different point in my life. And that's okay. I never in a million years, and I'm sure you didn't either, for 10 years, I did never, ever think I would sell my business. I created this. It's my baby and it's my whole life. And then guess what? You sell it.
Yep.
And because your life changed, right? Yep. And it doesn't it's nothing less on that business. It's still, for you, it's still an amazing dance studio. For me, it's still a great online store. Nothing has diminished that business, but that business now is being ran by someone that fashion and dance is their whole life.
Right.
And we've moved to other things that we find joy in, or that fulfill us. Right. And that's totally fine. It's totally okay to move on and grow and develop as humans.
It says absolutely nothing about you or your, determination or anything like that. If you shift gears.
That's right. It's so true. And I can tell you
I'm somebody who really, I'm getting better, but I have always been somebody who cares way too much what people think. And so
yes.
one of the first thoughts when it came to selling my business was like, A, are people going to think that I'm a failure? B, do people think I don't care? You know, so many things go through your head. And honestly, things changed. My life changed, and that is okay.
Yeah, it's okay. And I think too, when you're at that point that you're ready to make that change, you don't care as much.
Nope.
You don't care
Totally.
if people say you failed or you whatever, because you're like, well, whatever. Like,
Well,
I'm moving on to this other great thing in life.
Yep.
And it may be a child, it may be a different business, it may be just, I don't want to say just, I said that and then it sounds silly, but getting a job, like not being an entrepreneur for a little while, right?
Yeah.
And just living that that life. It doesn't matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
If you've grown and changed, it's okay that your next projects grow and change with you. It's important, actually.
I love that. Yeah.
No, that's great. Do you have a most important lesson that you can share from your time being an entrepreneur?
My most important lesson. I've had a lot of lessons along the way. If I was to, I don't know if this is a lesson, but if I was to give advice, it would be to have a really strong why, because in the hardest days, that is what is going to keep you going. So
that's a great one.
I wouldn't say it's a lesson, but it is some of the best advice that I received, because the hard days are what's going to get you.
Yeah, that's true. And the thing too is at the very beginning, you talked about bringing people joy when you started your first business. And if you remember that in the days that are really hard or you're struggling, whether it's financially or mentally, emotionally, whatever it is, and then you see a kid come in and be so happy, it's like that changes you, right? That changes it for you.
Or the days that I walked into my office and, oh my God, it felt like everything was going wrong. And I had a picture that one of the students drew me that was shoved under my door. And, you know, like those little glimmers of that why, you know, that is what keeps you going. And whether your why is tied to, you know, your vision for your company, or whether it is because you want to support your family or be able to have time freedom for your family or whatever, just remember your why, because it will make the hard days seem doable.
Yeah, 100%. And is there anything you wish you had known, or maybe something that you could tell your 20-year-old self starting out?
There's lots of things I wish I would have known. This entire chat was full of them. But if I could tell my 20-year-old self something, it would be, you can do it. Because you have so many doubts, and the only person that you have to convince that you can do it is yourself. So start there and you will be successful.
That's true. I love that. Where can people find you? Because I know people are going to want to know more about you and your businesses. So what is the best place for people to search you out?
Yeah, I'm always on Instagram. So my handle there is at Meagan Nicole. So it is MMEAGANICOLE. And you can find links to everything else from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Meagan. It was great chatting with you. And I know a lot of people are going to listen to this and really know that they're not alone and that they can do it and be successful. So I really appreciate you being on.
I appreciate you having me. This was awesome.
It was awesome. Thank you so much. And for everybody listening, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Winning. Be sure to subscribe to get all of our new episodes. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, and leave a rating and review wherever you listen to Winning. To catch all of the latest from us, you can follow Winning Podcast on Instagram at winning_podcast, Facebook at Winning Podcast, and on Twitter at Winning Pod. Winning was created and is produced by me, Mackenzie Kilshaw. Music created by Summer Furby. Editing by Seth Armstrong. Special thanks to Shauna Foster for voicing our opening. And of course, a huge thank you to to this episode's guest. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.